Ready? Here we go.
Different points of view and highs and lows. A new perspective everywhere you go. Open up your mind, drown out the noise, and see if this connected. And see if this connected.
What's up, fam? The mission of this Connected podcast is to connect generations and situations about faith, life, and whatever comes along the way. To not necessarily agree, but be listened to. These conversations, of course, highlight the perspective of our various guests, and you are always welcome to agree or even disagree. But as always, we hope that it is done in charity. Now, here's your host, Catholic.Dad.
So we're back, fam, for another episode of the podcast. We have a special guest again today. We have Manny Huerta from Net Ministries, who's joining us. But before we start on our topic today, I just want to share some news. Today was a busy day because Pope Francis, he brought something out. And Pope Francis wouldn't be Pope Francis unless he put something out that can be construed as, what would you say, controversial? So he's one of the most controversial popes that I've ever had. I mean, haven't had many. Pope John Paul II, Saint Pope John Paul the Great, took most of that time. But he released an apostolic letter called, issued motu proprio by the Supreme Pontiff Francis, called Traditionis Custodes. And so a lot of my friends who are into the traditional Latin Mass or to the extraordinary form rather than the Novus Ordo are really in an uproar because of the changes. So it's a really short read, this motu proprio. And so I suggest you all read it, be prudential about it, have a discussion about it. And one of these days, we're either going to have one of our priests come and talk to us about it on the podcast, or one of you listeners who want to come on and talk to us about how you feel about the changes that Pope Francis has included in this motu proprio. And I think what he's trying to say, it's all about unity. So let's read into that. I'm seeing a lot of the stuff that's on YouTube from a lot of the Catholic speakers out there, and there's a mixed basket of responses, as usual in our Catholic faith. One of my friends, we've been talking all day regarding this, and basically what I came out to, my thoughts was, this is the reason why I know the Catholic Church is the Catholic Church, the one true church, because we're going through such arguments and we're still here, still family, just like as family goes. Things happen, but we talk it out, talk it over, and this thing is not going to go away. Because again, it goes back to Vatican II and the whole issue in the 1970 changes, spirit of Vatican II, all that stuff, and the way that we, the liturgy, quote unquote, changed. And amazingly enough, in the discussions that I've been reading, there was a lot of young adults who are very attracted to the traditional Latin Mass or the extraordinary form of the Mass.
Yeah.
And so, which leads us to our topic for this podcast today: young adults and volunteers and youth ministry. And how do we recruit people to be in youth ministry or, whatever. So I have Manny here because he's my resident go-to guy from Net. He's my in to talk to us, to have that discussion with us about that issue. Manny, when I did ministry, the hardest part of ministry was not doing nights. It wasn't doing liturgy. It wasn't finding content to talk about.
Mm.
It was finding people to volunteer and help. It's like, where are you? I mean, it's like, no wonder Jesus only found 12. Right?
Yeah, man. No kidding.
So you're here. I asked you to come here to share with us a little bit more about what's going on in the Catholic forum, about what young people want. How do we get volunteers, and how do we completely activate ministry?
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I'm totally with you on the whole volunteers being just a big roadblock at times for starting up ministry. If you're starting up in youth ministry this summer, taking on a program, if you're starting or if you're continuing, you've probably experienced this.
I said, it rang my bell. Go ahead.
No, yeah, and I totally hear you on that. I think we need to really just kind of take a step back as ministers, and I think the first thing is realizing, the importance of volunteers, leaders, and really taking time to invest in the appropriate leadership team. A lot of times I think we're just scrambling to get whoever we can, whoever,
Right.
just like any person with a pulse that can get into a program.
Yeah. Can you breathe? I'll take you.
Yeah, and it's important, but just one person at a time will really make a difference in your program, and you want to look at the long game. Ideally, if you have a vision for your program for the long game, 3-year vision, 5-year vision, that type of stuff. But yeah, you want to really look at just your volunteer base, really ministering to them. The reality is that when you're in ministry, you can't divide yourself into 15-20 people, so you need volunteers. That's kind of accepting that is the first step here. Bringing in volunteers, yeah, that's another issue, but you really just need to find people that you can invest in so that they will start helping you minister. You just can't do this alone.
I think when we all start going into ministry, we go into ministry as the youth minister, and we feel like we're going to minister to everyone. I'm going to touch every single youth, and I'm going to be that person for every single youth. And you find out right away that you can't.
No,
you can't.
You just don't have the time. Let's be honest. You don't have the time, and you don't have the capacity to emotionally invest in so many people. That's really what discipleship is all about, really being there for a group of people or one person specifically. And as individuals, we just don't have the time and the emotional, mental capacity to invest in, even 30 youth. If your program's 20 youth, we just can't. So we need volunteers. And what we can do and what is sustainable is you investing in a set amount of volunteers, of group leaders, that then you can send them to invest in your youth that you're trying to, your target audience. So I think that's a big starting point. If you've been trying to just go at it and talk to as many teenagers and minister to as many teenagers as you can, that's fine. That's part of youth ministry. But volunteers, I dare to say, it's really the main part of youth ministry.
So invest in a few. Jesus invested in 12,
mm-hmm.
and he really invested in 3 that were really close to him.
Yeah.
And those people invested in 12 of theirs, or 3, or some people close to them. And from there, it moved on and on. I wanted to share that once upon a time, I was a disaster manager. I planned for disasters, big fires, things in hospitals, things like that. And part of that is that you can only affect or lead between 3 and 7 people effectively. And that was from best practices from IBM and from the military.
Yeah.
You don't have the general, going to everyone. He has all these people. And so from that study, That's how we fight wildfires in California. Is every single person is only responsible for 3 to 7 people, up to 7 people. The optimum number is 3 and 5, 3 to 5 people.
Got
And if you can invest the time and supervise and manage 3 to 5 people, those 3 to 5 people are going to manage 3 to 5 people,
Mm.
and so on and so forth. And it works.
Yeah.
Nobody dies.
Yep. And it's sustainable. You know, it's sustainable, which is, you know, I think it's something we struggle with youth ministry. We struggle at that, you know, at making this thing like happen for years. You know, it's like, it's really like 2-year turnaround, you know, and then different model, and then different program, different approach. You know, people, volunteer youth ministers
Yeah.
burning themselves out, you know, because they just can't take on all these responsibilities. And so really looking at delegating and having a team that's going to support you in that way, it's crucial, it's essential. You personally can't meet and encounter and influence all of your teens, but you can meet and encounter and influence your adult volunteers so they can do the same with your
Hey,
teenagers.
say that again.
So
That just blew me away.
you can't personally meet and encounter and influence all of your teenagers, right, in your programs, but you can meet and encounter and influence your adult volunteers so they can do that with your teenagers.
Wow. But I want to be the center of attention. That's why I got into youth ministry, right? It's like, ding, wrong. You're not the center of attraction. It's the Eucharist. It's Jesus.
Yes.
But that is a thing that is really hard.
Mhm.
It's to entrust in other people.
Yeah.
They're doing what you vision,
Mhm.
what your vision of ministry is, and that they're doing things right.
Yeah.
So it's trust.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think this brings me back to that comment I was just sharing with you, my friend made. When we look at volunteers, when I asked my friend, what if you could share anything about adult volunteers or volunteers in ministry, what would you share? And she said, find out what they're good at. It's talking about the volunteers. Find out what they're good at, and they'll stay with you for a long time. So if you're a minister, right, that should be your goal, to find out what these people that are sticking around you, what they're good at, and make them do that, right? And they're going to stay with you for a long time, because one thing, they're doing something they're good at, and they're doing something they probably enjoy doing. So they're going to want to keep doing it, and they're going to want to keep serving you, the church, the Lord, the teenagers, doing those same things. Sustainability.
So all this time, I've been trying to find a round hole to fit into a square peg, because that's what I need in my ministry, is a square peg. But all I'm finding are round holes, and it just hasn't been working.
Yeah.
Because I've been trying to fit them to what I want, instead of identifying that this is what they are and this is what they're good at.
Yeah.
That's hard, though.
It is because at the end of the day, like, I understand it. You know, I was a youth minister. I had a plan. I had that vision. And in my mindset, it's like, I need someone that can write talks and do talks really well, you know, for example. And I couldn't find that person, and I ended up having to do them all the time. Well, you know, it's like, that was my mindset. What if what we needed to do is maybe change to a small group type of youth ministry, where they met with that leader mentor themselves, and then there was no need for someone to be up front giving talks, right? Rethinking so that the teenagers are going to be ministered no matter what, right? They're going to be ministered, but rethinking it so that your adult volunteers and their skill sets are, highlighted, expanded, that they're being focused on, and that they're using their skill set the best to serve the church.
Or even having sessions that focuses on that person's talent, God-given talent, and say, hey, you know what, you're really good at this. Why don't you do a session, a night, that focuses on that, and you can show us, and you can do this. And I am not musically inclined like some people who got in line twice. took my musical talent, Manny. But there are some people who are so musically inclined, but they're so shy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, why don't you sing
Yeah.
and make that tonight and offer that up to the Lord, and it'll be beautiful. Yeah. Well,
Or something's coming up to mind. I used to always like, it was just weird for me, I guess, when we had volunteers that just had a passion for like this one thing, like for example, like I had these volunteers, and like they love ministering to just the women, just the women. They had a heart for the girls, and I was like, I don't know, I was like, we need to minister to all of them. It's like, well, wait, why don't we let them do that for a few sessions here and there, and then we can have some other guys minister to the guys, or I can take that, like, yeah, use their skills, use their passion, their desire. Like they wanted to do that, like, let's go for it, let's make it happen. Let's let them shine, let's let the light of the Lord shine through them.
So Manny, where did you find volunteers?
Okay, so so volunteers, to be honest, when I came into the program at first, if I'm honest, there were like a good amount of volunteers in my program, in the programs that I walked into, and so that was a blessing. I think what I had to focus on is getting younger volunteers, for the sense of having people be a little bit more relational.
Mm-hmm.
But I also fell under the misconception that like my volunteers need to be like young, need to be like teenagers or young adults. Wrong. It's like some of the greatest evangelists and disciplers were, like retirees.
Yeah.
People that, didn't have children anymore at home. And these were like great people at discipling other young people, middle schoolers, which people are afraid in ministry. Everyone's afraid of the middle schoolers.
But what was funny with middle schoolers, and I'm glad you brought up middle schoolers, is middle schoolers are more responsive to older volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
They're like grandpa and grandma. And they actually listen to them, they behave around them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because older people bring about the wisdom, and they love to tell stories.
Yeah. I had this one guy, man. No kidding. Okay, so he's like this older guy, retired, and he was very like kind of like stern, type of guy. But every time he'd speak, he always had good stories to tell. Every time he'd speak, the room went silent. Like all the kiddos just like totally like boom, eyes on him, listening up. And afterwards conversations in small group were great, like because everyone's listening. And then sometimes I go up and I think like, oh, I'm doing a great job here and there, this and that, and like no one would talk about what like things I would mention in the teaching or anything like that. So yeah, it's pretty funny.
So don't be afraid to volunteer, even if you're old like me. Don't don't be afraid to volunteer, because relational ministry is not simply, for me, it's not simply being relational as in you're my age group and I can relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I've experienced that. I've lived that. And this is how I got through that. And being relational is being present to that empathy for that young person. And man, you're going to go through hard times if you continue on that path. So let me tell you that there's bumps on the roads and areas where you should avoid. Where someone who is in their 20s, who may have not lived that life, may not have that wisdom to share. So what I'm saying is, if you're older and you want to, if a youth minister, a young youth minister asks you, can you volunteer for youth ministry? Say yes. Say yes, because that's the Lord sending someone to you that's saying there is a need in the church and you have just been called.
And now on the other hand, if you're a youth minister, I know I always kind of like this time of the year is when you're trying to recruit volunteers, right? Mm-hmm. Ministry is going to start up in a few months. It was July, August, September that you were trying to like assemble a team so you can get some trainings in. Just don't be afraid to ask people. Like I think so many times I can think of so many times where I just didn't listen to the Holy Spirit. And like the Holy Spirit was like freaking pounding on my heart.
It's like this guy,
this guy right there. And Manny was like, that guy? Like, really? You want him?
like bells were ringing.
No kidding, man. But like seriously, as leaders, just ask. Get used to rejection because it's gonna happen. But ask, be docile to what the Holy Spirit's doing in your heart, and you got to know, you ask like, where would I find volunteers? It really, new volunteers came through my old volunteers a lot of time, and simply also from just asking outside of mass. Like it just never, you can never fail there. You can never fail. You hear that, that speech, or that kind of call for the new catechist or new ministers, new volunteers, new core team members, and every time you get a couple here, a couple there, and now again, like going back to what we were talking about, I think it's more about retaining them and feeding those volunteers so they can become expert ministers, so they can become disciples.
And I'm glad you said that, because retention, I remember one time where I was so happy with myself, like I got 38 volunteers. 2 months later, I have 28 volunteers. 3 months later, I have 18 volunteers.
Yeah.
It's like there's like this attrition of volunteers because there's like, this is work. And I think in my case, it was a lack of preparing people for what was to come and feeding them, and ministering to them, because you're so busy ministering to everybody else, and you're using and abusing your volunteers. It's like volunteer retention was not, it was just, you're a body. I need you to do this. You need to do this. Do this. And you're like cracking the whip.
Yeah, that's one of the things I probably like regret the most, is not doing that enough. You can never give enough to your volunteers. They are the lungs of your ministry. Like the Lord is the heart, and He's pumping through everyone, but they're breathing this new oxygen every single week into your ministry, your volunteers. And like, you just can never give them enough. You can never minister to them enough. Exactly. And so I totally hear you, like that phrase you just used, like just using them, abusing them. It's like, yeah, I can totally see how many ministries work in that way. And there's that kind of like certain point, like this entitlement at times that ministries get, that like, you should be serving here. And it's like, no, like it's their free time. They do serve the Lord in many other ways, by being husbands, by being, wives, by, taking care of their own children, by taking care of grandchildren, maybe.
And they're young, the young volunteers, they have lives. Yeah. And that's one of the things that we have to realize too, as youth ministers, is young people, just because they're young doesn't mean that they don't have things to do. And what amazed me was the fact that young volunteers were taking AP classes, full load of subjects in college and in high school, and they're still able to make it. And they're present. And then they don't get the accolades that the minister gets. And they're there, and they just get looked over. And I think that's also part of that burnout. We burned them out. I know I burnt out a lot, and I'm sorry if you're listening to this and I burnt you out. This is my mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. I've been doing a lot of Hail Marys for you.
That's awesome, man. No, yeah, same goes here, man. Same goes here.
So to go off on another tangent, it's recruiting is always hard.
Amen.
and then recruiting quality. And that's what I used to always look at. It's like, oh, I'm going to recruit quality this year instead of quantity. And then I remember someone telling me, it's like, God doesn't call the qualified. He just sends you who it is, just to either humble you or tell you this person is here so that you can grow and they can grow. And young people can watch both of you grow and they'll learn from that. So many learning experiences from just being humbled to seek out disciples in the vineyard. I always look at it as Jesus going out looking for people, and then Jesus got his 12, and then there's these 12 wandering around trying to find other people to help them, and they're like, I can't get no one, Jesus. It's like that whole thing. It's like there's 5,000 out there we need to feed, and Jesus says, well, feed them.
Just
like,
do it.
With what? And they find this one kid and they steal his fish and his bread. It's like, I got this. I'm gonna claim this. It's like, get away, kid. You don't need this. Here's one fish. Go home. Get some more. But yeah, all joking aside, for all you ministers out there who might be listening to this, I know that there's other podcasts out there who'll tell you the six things of how to do recruitment.
And you won't believe number 5.
There's always 6 things, or the top 3 things of how to do recruiting, or the top 10 things to do on retaining the youth ministry volunteers. And
like number 1, 5, and 7 are the same one.
Yeah, and it's like, and you try to put that together, and you're like, man, it's working for me. And eventually, what you're going to realize is what we just said. You got to trust in the Holy Spirit. As your friend said, find what they're good at, engage them, and ask them, what would you like to do? Yeah. And then feed them and center it on the Eucharist. Yeah. And what I like to always say is, if they're seeing you work, then they're going to work. And that was my whole story. It's like, I work as much as you guys, but I don't expect you to work as much as I do. Because I think that's
true.
That's the worst thing to look at in your volunteers, is because you're putting in 40, 50 hours, you also expect them to put in 40, 50 hours. And you're almost offended that they only put in 38. Right? It's like, I've been here all morning and you guys want to leave? So appreciate what is given. And what I always like to say, and this works for the workplace as well, your standards are not the same as their standards. You're excellent at what you do because you're the minister. That person isn't the minister, and that person is still growing. So you have to allow them to be them, to make errors, provide humble correction and guidance, and say, it's okay. Yeah. I think sometimes we treat ministry as work, and for volunteers as slaves, because we don't have to pay them.
Wow. No, yeah.
Feed them with pizza.
Good old pizza. Yeah.
That's how I got to where I am.
Yeah, when we say feed your volunteers, we definitely don't mean the pizza.
Yeah,
Let's clarify.
Definitely not the pizza.
Oh god.
Me and Manny used to be really skinny.
Yeah. Back in the day.
Back in the day, and that's what happened to pizza. But as a segue to our next topic, you showed me, and we were talking about things that Net is going, and we were talking about what young people desire in ministry. So share with me and share with our listeners the things that you guys, the great things that you guys are doing, the great things that are happening from the National Dialogue. And what is the National Dialogue? Because a lot of people are like, National what?
Yeah, so the National Dialogue on Catholic pastoral ministry with youth and young adults. So this was this dialogue that happened from like 2017 to 2020. So they pretty much what the church did is they brought young people, young adults and older people, volunteers, adults in
He
general.
looks at me. It's like the older people.
Yeah, and so they pretty much surveyed and they just had this conversation about where we are in youth ministry, where we should go, the whole deal, right? So it's very big picture. And I was very, I guess I wasn't like shocked to hear some of the things that came out, but I think it's something that we should know and we should address, right? Like the young people, what Gen Z has spoken,
Gen Z,
right? The Catholics of Gen Z have spoken, and the second thing that they say they want from the church is greater intergenerational support, dialogue, and mentorship.
Intergenerational support, dialogue, and mentorship.
Yes.
So let's tackle the first one, intergenerational support. You know, when I hear intergenerational support, you know, I go back to my training when I do training at work, where we have traditionalists, those people who were born around World War II, you know, the great generation.
Great, certainly.
And then I hear boomers, which, by the way, I'm not a boomer. I'm offended.
I love boomers. Let me just say
there's
that.
boomers, and then there's Generation X, and then there's the millennial generation, and then there's Gen Z. And, you know, at work, in my workplace, I see that there's some turmoil within those generations of how they talk to each other, how they discuss each other, they have discussions with each other, and how they approach each other. But with Gen Z, the first generation that completely has been raised with the internet, and I love having conversations with Gen Z because one, they have talks with me like they're my equal.
I was gonna say that I literally just came from hanging out with a family friend, and their kiddos that I used to be their youth minister, and they were talking to me, about like older like things that happened in like the 90s or the early 2000s, as if they were like 20 when they were there. Yeah, like they were there when they happened. And I was dying.
Like, I hear you, Manny. You know, it's like having that conversation. But I love having conversations with them because it makes me feel young. It's like, oh yeah, well, I can totally relate to how you're feeling. You know, you're not 50 years old, but I know you feel that. But that conversation, there's no boundary of I'm not shy to have a conversation with someone who's older than me because age is not a factor. It's you know, I know this topic and I'm going to have discussion with you regarding it, and that's refreshing. Yeah, that's refreshing because my generation, you know, we were raised to as children, as young people, you were there to be seen but not heard. So you're just supposed to behave, and you know, that's so. What is intergenerational in that aspect?
Well, I think it aligns with the multiple generations that we have currently, because again, pretty much all these generations were a part of this process, right? But they want greater support. That's what they're saying here, that they want support. They want like what you're really talking about. Just they want to be not just seen but heard as well, and they want more. You know, even take it a step further in action.
Like what I'm saying does matter.
Yeah,
you know, it does matter. It's not don't cast me aside as non-existent, or what I see a lot sometimes in the church is young people are cast aside as what do you know, and I think that dialogue, having that dialogue with them is very important, empowering them, and I like this term that one of the young person said to me is we just wanted a seat at the table. and that's very awkward because if you've ever seen parish councils,
Yeah.
I'm young in those parish councils. It's like they're on the way out. And I'm sorry for you guys in parish councils who are getting very old, but there's
We're probably
literally
not listening.
literally probably not. Put on the hearing aids. But you don't see very many young people in parish councils or in parish leadership committees. You definitely will very rarely ever see a 20-something.
My wife was when we were dating, she was on parish council, and I thought it was really, really interesting. I was like, how the heck do you get into parish council? I thought there was like an age requirement, like,
Even senators have to be 32. I mean, presidents.
35.
35
Right,
for presidents,
35.
yeah.
Yeah,
Even
30.
the president has to be 35. A parish council? Don't you have to be like 60?
I know. Oh my gosh. No, yeah, I was shocked when she told me, like, we were just talking, and she told me, I'm part of the parish council here. And I was like, oh, what?
It's like, who do you know?
I,
They're like, is that nepotism? They're like related to
you know
Jesus?
someone? You got an in.
Yeah,
You got an in.
but can you imagine putting a high school student in the parish council?
Right.
It's that would just blow my mind.
And I think parish councils are definitely another conversation. I want to meet and know like parish councils that are like on fire for change in the parish, because I think that's what parish councils are like supposed to do. But obviously that's a conversation for
totally different
another
conversation.
day.
Because there are different parish councils. There are older parish councils for older parishes. But if you guys have a lot of young people, put some young people in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like set the world on fire, and that starts at your parish. But go on. What's another thing that they wanted to have? Dialogue, intergenerational.
Yeah, mentorship from the intergenerational groups. So they want mentorship, and I think that's where it comes down to our volunteers. So like again, if you're someone who might be thinking like maybe you've been out of ministry for a little while, maybe you've been contemplating like, it's this coming back to volunteering youth ministry after this COVID stuff. Don't shy away from doing it because they want you. Young people today want you. They need you. They're calling for you. They're calling for all of us to step up to the plate, to listen, to love them, and to walk with them.
That's right. And you know what? The start of youth ministry, Catholic youth ministry, CYM in Chicago, was all about mentorship. It's about mentoring during that time troubled youth to get into sports and dances, and it was a lot of mentorship. And now the mentors were priests and clergy, but I do see a lot of when I read about really successful ministries, they have a multitude of generations and support from older people.
Yeah.
And I remember having the opportunity to go to the National Conference of Catholic Ministers in Florida. And I thought there were just a lot of old people because it was Florida. But on the flight out, at the airport, all these people flying out, they're from all over the place. They're from Washington, Portland, Oregon, all over the United States. And I was looking, and it's like, there was a lot of older people who were serving in youth ministry. And I remember asking a couple, it's like, how long have you guys been doing youth ministry? 30 years. 30 years they've been doing youth ministry. But this is the thing that was so amazing with these two from Portland. They were doing youth ministry for 30 years, but for the past 15 years, they've been providing support services for youth ministry, mentorship.
Yeah.
But here's the funny thing: what they were providing mentorship for, they were mentoring youth ministers.
Yeah.
I was like, that's classic.
Yeah. No.
Like, here are the pitfalls of youth ministry, and that's why they were there. They were the ones providing mentorship for young and new youth ministers, and that's amazing. So
that was us at one time.
At one time, we were young.
At one time, that was us.
Yeah. So what are some of the other things from this national dialogue that we can learn from?
Yeah, so they want faith formation reimagined. Yeah, that's actually number one. I didn't mention it, but faith formation, confirmation preparation, they want it reimagined away from the classroom model.
Yeah,
Which
I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I posted something that says, "Was your was your religious education experience transactional or was it transformational?" And I
preach.
never posted the response there, but 35% said it was transformational,
Mm.
which meant that the rest of y'all said it was transactional. I got in and out, and I was lucky to
Yeah.
still be in the church.
Yeah.
But that's true though.
Yeah.
It's like I'm a confirmation catechist. I mean, I've been a confirmation catechist forever, but I could count how many people who have been through confirmation with me who are, where are they?
Yeah.
And here's the thing, what I really it irks me that every time that we have confirmation programs, it's like, here are the requirements. You have to meet this requirement, meet this requirement, 25 hours of this, this and that, and this and that. And as a catechist, all you're doing is like, okay, can you turn in this thing? Can you turn in this thing? But it's like, when do you get to work with them to transform their lives, to fall in love with the Lord?
That's exactly the thing.
Serve.
Like, explain to me, and again, I'm not like, this is not Manny as in pointing the finger to ministers and parishes that are doing this, is myself, like, because I was part of those programs. I implemented these programs. So I think that my frustration comes with, I can't go back in time and tell old Manny, like, snap out of it, man. Like, disciple these young people. Don't just give them a list of things to do so they can check them off, get a certificate, and get out. And that's where my frustration comes, because, like, explain to me how, I don't know, putting bags together, which it's important. It's charitable work. It's important. It's a work of mercy to put bags with, essentials for the homeless and hand them out. It's important. But when you're so detached from those actions that they're not actually being transformational, like, it's good to have those actions being done, but are they transforming the heart of the young people that's doing it? And if they're not, then the purpose is defeated. The goal is not being accomplished. Because if our programs are changing hearts, then praise God. If they're not changing hearts, then we need to change.
I think it's really hard for such a big, I'm calling the church an organization, such a large organization, to move away from that model of get them through, sacramentalize them, get them through confirmation, graduate. It still makes me cringe when I see confirmations and they're wearing like togas. I don't know if you have that. Some do.
No comment.
But it's like, the girls wear white, the guys wear red, or vice versa. And then it's like graduation, and it's like the only thing you're missing is the cap. But you get a certificate, a diploma. It says you're now confirmed. You're done with everything except marriage prep, but you get another diploma, which is another one. So what I look at, and I'm glad that even our diocese is working on this, is transforming the way that we do catechesis and doing evangelization, so that they have a transformative experience that doesn't stop in the 10th grade, doesn't stop in the 11th grade, but just ignites it so that they continue being transformed, continue being transform in the faith and living out the faith. Because I see young people that are so on fire because they had such a great experience in ministry,
Mm.
and they're still serving. And what makes that different than the other person who was literally sitting next to that person who didn't get it? And for me, I think when we look at how to transform Catholics into missionary disciples, is that we're receiving them as students, teaching them like students in a classroom model, but we're not ministering to the parents. We're not ministering to the family, and we're not ministering to the community.
Yeah.
And I'm not pointing fingers, because I think we're all guilty of that, of really poor liturgy, and things that we go through. But there has to be some kind of change, because I know when I was younger, I don't remember anything at all, because it just wasn't there for me. So I don't know where the answers are, but definitely there needs to be a dialogue on what to do with that, because we are, as a church, bleeding in adults. Like when I look at my friends, whose children are no longer in the church because they're at some other really cool sounding Protestant church, like flip flops and and water.
That church that has like a little coffee bar right at the back.
Little coffee bar. It's like, and you can go to services while drinking your latte.
Latte's probably very good.
And by the way, I've been. Lattes are very good.
Are they free?
Yes.
I wonder if I could just go like, hey, it's Sunday morning, just go get a latte.
You probably get
Thank
a
you
double
so
if you
much.
say you're Catholic. It's like, oh, he's Catholic. He's gonna stay. Give him a free big one. A venti.
Oh.
But that's amazing. I like that discussion that young people are requesting, are asking for that. But what else is going on in that national dialogue? Because during this podcast, what I've been seeing is my interactions has been a lot with young adults. For some reason, this second year of the podcast, it's mainly a lot of people that I'm having discussions with, and podcasts are with young adults going through the stages in their life, from courtship to marriage. I'm not going to make that announcement. Let's make that announcement on the road. But he's not in the closet. He proposed.
Wait,
I think I let that out. I'm gonna let this out. No, I'm not.
Okay, don't.
But the guy who we keep in the closet, he proposed.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's gonna edit. He's gonna edit this.
Praise God. Hey, congratulations, man.
But we're not announcing it. We're not announcing it.
Yeah. All right, we're not announcing.
We're not announcing it, but he's gonna edit this podcast.
Great.
And put it on YouTube.
Awesome. So he'll know.
This podcast is so tangential. It's just the church. I lost my little notes on that you sent me with regarding the national dialogue. I actually have a 138-page part of that national dialogue, and the executive summary of this is let me try to find it right there.
I got you. It's right there.
Got it.
It's right there. There it is.
All right. It says, well, this is done in 2017, 2020.
Yeah.
And NET was part of it, La Red, which does Pastoral Juvenil. And 10,000 individuals. I am really hoping that from this national dialogue, see here's my issue. a lot of times I get invited to these things where we dialogue about the issues and the concerns about the young people,
Mm.
and I'm just going to put it out there.
Tell me.
It's like death by committee. It's like you have the national dialogue in 2017.
Yeah.
It's 2021 going on 2022. The people that you had dialogue with in 2017 are now having children, and some of them are reaching past Jesus' age.
Mm.
And we're still having the discussion.
Yeah.
And I know we're the Catholic Church and we've been here for over 2,000 years and there's time. But I always cringe when we have, because I work for I work for the government. We're here to help. But even in government, we have this joke that if you put this into committee, it's going to be death by committee, which means we're going to talk about it to death. And then we're going to come out with really great 100-page long discussions.
Yeah.
And there's nothing as in action plans of how to initiate this on the front lines, which would be the parish.
Yeah.
So
and that's why I think I want to encourage, and maybe you can link this, the summary, the 3-page summary. You can link it to this podcast, this video, because we need to get ministers to be aware of this, be aware of what's being said, because they're the ministers are the ones that can take direct action.
Yeah.
Like, don't wait for your diocese to follow suit on this. Don't wait for the trends in ministry, and the programmers that make ministry resources to follow suit on this. Like, you can do it. You can take action on these points. Like I said, what are youth asking for? They're asking for us to move away from the classroom model. That's simple. It's very simple. You know,
say it's simple. Have you spoken to some of the DREs?
It's simple. That's what I'm saying. DREs are are in a position of power to make that call. It's another thing for you to, as a DRE maybe, or as a person in charge, to have a change of heart and decide to go away from the classroom model. That's another conversation. But doing it is simple.
Making that change is simple. Doing the training, I think what happens here is getting the buy-in from the pastor himself and saying, we are doing this, and I'm going to provide the funds and the training for all of these faith formation catechists to how to do this. Because I remember in a parish I was in where they changed DREs, and she made changes, and it was like almost a full-blown rebellion from catechists who said, we've been doing this for the past 20 years like this.
Yeah,
it's worked.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, it doesn't. And you had people leaving. And I guess you just have to accept that and fill in the role.
Sometimes.
I ran into this. It says, some particular trends that emerged included these following. And it's when older people hear this, they say, oh yeah, that's very, very Gen Z or very millennial statements. I want to read them to you. It says, the young people in these conversations are actively engaged in their faith. That's good. Yet still struggle with the church. And most older people say, well, that's bad. Whereas on my end, I say, no, that's good. Because we all struggle with our faith. We all go through this phase where there's struggle with our faith. I think any person who's past that, who's completely at that point where they realize their faith and and says, the church is the one true church, and I am fulfilled in the church, have forgotten the path and the bumpy roads that they were in, where they questioned and struggled with the church. And there are a lot of things, especially in this generation and during our times, that society, the secular world, sometimes contradicts what the church teaches. That's a huge struggle, but it's not new. I mean, they have that in the 1800s, and they had that way probably in the 1500s, and they probably even had it during Jesus' time. So God forbid Jesus would hang out with sinners and prostitutes. Shocking. There's the other one. This is there is incredible diversity among youth and young adults in terms of culture, ecclesial perspective, spirituality, and lived experiences. An awareness and responsibility to this diversity may at times be lost in ministry with diverse community of young people. Now, I'm reading that because we live in the Diocese of San Bernardino, and I've seen parishes where there's like a Filipino youth group, an Igbo youth group, an English youth group, Spanish youth group, and they're messed up because they don't know how to do shared ministry. They don't know how to come together. So instead they separate and they never come together.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is they all know each other.
Yeah.
It's almost like they all go and say, "Hey, what's up?" And you see each other at mass, say, "Hey, what's going on?" And then youth ministry goes and they're like, "I gotta go this way.
Yeah.
You belong over there, you belong over there." And that's a different conversation on how we go about doing that.
Yeah.
How to do it better.
Yeah, I think that's again that is a big conversation. But I mean, just to give you this idea that my wife and I went to the same parish, grew up in the same parish, and never met until I was a young adult. Because I and my parents, I grew up in the Hispanic community, Spanish Mass all my life. And she grew up in the American community, English Mass, all her life, all that stuff. And our paths never crossed in youth ministry because there was no Spanish youth ministry. So my parents were like, I'm not too sure about that American youth ministry stuff that they're doing.
We're gonna take you away.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, misconceptions from both sides. Like I've encountered just from both sides, parents that are skeptical to cross that line with their young people, just because of the language barrier and the cultural barrier. And I think if you're in a position like you are, have your foot in one foot in one community, one foot in the other community, like try and build that bridge.
True.
Now,
I'm not endorsing this book. And it's not the greatest, but it's all I have. But this book is called Best Practices for Shared Parishes. And it's called So That They May All Be One. And it's bilingual. It cracks me up when these are bilingual because I thought I bought a really big book and half of it is in Spanish and half of it is in English. It's like, so there it is. So I can literally tear this other half and give it to somebody else.
Someone that can understand.
Somebody could understand the other half of the book. But it's a really good read because it talks about how to share a parish. But the only thing that I don't like about that is the word shared, because it's kind of like I still have mine,
right?
And
you
still have yours.
Yeah, like
and
this
I'm
is
just,
your time, this is my time type of deal. And I totally understand that.
Yeah, that's why I said it's a good read, but it's not probably the best. There's another book probably make a recommendation to me about what's a better book to read about sharing a parish, because it's almost like it's the way I look at this is it's kind of like potluck. I'm bringing my dish, you're bringing your dish, and you can eat some of mine, or you can choose not to.
Yeah,
but we're not still one. We're not goulash. Another one that says here, the participants by and large wanted to see church leadership and their fellow Christians be more authentic and less judgmental and divisive.
Yeah,
I'm like, that doesn't happen in Catholic Church.
You know what though? I mean, I might just be taking a very specific angle at this, but I've heard this before, the authenticity thing, from young people about, like, we're talking about volunteer leaders, about being authentic. As a leader, just be yourself. Like, that's why I mentioned, like, some of the greatest leaders were older people. My greatest volunteers disciplers were older people because they just were themselves. They weren't, they knew they were so far away from these middle schoolers, from these 13, 12-year-olds. They're like, there's no way that I'm going to even like come remotely to looking, sounding, or thinking like these middle schoolers. So I'm not going to make an effort. I'm going to be myself.
Yep.
And they're going to just take me or reject me. And I'm cool with that authenticity, bro.
I'm so glad you said that because I fall into it. Because there is no way I'm gonna be the cool hipster, the cool hipster youth group, youth minister, youth group leader, because I'm not a hipster. It's like, can you imagine me coming in dressed up like
boots, skinny jeans?
You trying to be relational? It's like, no, I'm just the old guy. But that's true though. I like what you said, authenticity, being authentic. And I think with a lot of older volunteers, they've already gone through that. This is who they are. It took them many years to get to who they are, and they're not going to change. They're set in their ways. This is who I am. I'm a Catholic old person, and this is me. I think one of the greatest compliments I ever got was, as an old volunteer, is, Mr. Not, you sure do have a lot of stories. I was like, what are you talking about? It's like every incident and anything, you have a story. And I think as an older volunteer, that's true, because you've lived a life.
Yeah.
And you've experienced a life full of mistakes and experiences, and you can relate that to young people. So anything that they say, it's like, they'll say something, it's like, I have a story. You're just full of stories. So if you're volunteering and you see someone who's older, ask them to volunteer, ask them to share their story.
Yeah.
There's this one guy at a religious education congress. I know I'm going on a tangent, but the reason why I share him is he is probably the most boring talk at Congress. He was a storyteller, but it was packed. And I sat in the back, and the guy literally just told a story. That was it. That was his charism, was to tell stories. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't know when kids stop wanting to hear stories, because I remember it's like, I used to run up to my mom and says, tell me a story. I think we still do. Jesus, what did he do? He told stories.
Yeah.
Didn't call them what? Parables.
I mean, what do? We sit down and watch stories now.
We watch stories.
Yeah.
Make sure you guys follow me on Instagram and follow my story.
Perfect.
But this one, I really wanted to touch this, and especially shout out to Carla and Letty and Susan, because it says parents and ministry leaders asked the church for more formation, as many felt ill-equipped to respond to changing realities, more resources on engaging the disaffiliated, more collaborative, supportive approach to leadership, and a better understanding of one another as both groups, parents, and leaders express frustration with one another. And I think with that, I know we're talking about volunteers. I just wanted to touch base with this, because I think many of the times my volunteers who are young were intimidated by parents. It's hard to, some parents are really strong, or they're very shy, or but as a volunteer, if you're going to be volunteering, this was my advice to my volunteers. If you run into difficulty, just tell them you're called the youth minister and have them talk to them. Pass the buck. That's all I'm saying. But this is good stuff, and we're going to attach a link to this authenticity gap. What's that about? The authenticity gap, transform ministry leadership, embrace complexity. There's locations of conversations. Wow, the Midwest was really, really strong in this.
All them Catholics
All the Catholics in the
in
Midwest.
the Midwest.
Yeah, 17% was from where we're at.
Yeah,
Oh.
70% of the responses.
Responses.
Yeah,
I just want to look at the issues and concerns mentioned within the conversations participants noted. Very interesting.
yeah. No, it's definitely a great read just to get a basic idea of like the whole scope in ministry and like where things are at, where youth are coming from, what young adults need. Um, it's a great starting point, but like you talked about, it all means nothing if we don't do something with this information.
Yeah.
So I think that's my biggest encouragement about this national dialogue. It's like, hey, let's do something with it because there's a lot of great stuff. And you know, I might sound like a broken record, but mentorship
Mhm.
and moving away from classroom model are the things that teenagers want, which is who we're here to talk about. Like,
Yeah.
how do we get to the teenagers? So away from classroom model and getting more mentorship, starting more dialogues. That sounds like discipleship groups.
Yeah.
You know,
That's completely discipleship, completely missionary discipleship. And what is that? I think a lot of times we don't speak about missionary discipleship enough. We don't speak about discipleship enough. We simply talk about getting people confirmed, getting people catechized, and we're done.
Yeah.
Getting
getting people to authentically follow Jesus.
I think actually the whole thing with Mystagogy, I think it should be at the beginning, not at the end. Let's talk about Mystagogy in the beginning and set them on fire. This is their expectation. This is where you're going to be. And then let's begin them with finding, this is cringy. This is cringy. It's not a Catholic thing. That personal relationship with Jesus.
Mm.
I know people are like, ugh.
They're scared.
Because actually, if we look at it
Protestant.
in Catholic terms, a personal relationship with Jesus is leading them to the Eucharist.
It is.
It's literally, that's the most
Well,
personal
it's leading them
relationship.
to the person,
Yeah,
which
to the
is
person of
Christ,
Jesus, which is the
which
Eucharist.
is the Eucharist.
So that personal relationship and understanding that I need to be his disciple
Mm.
and serve him in every single thing that I do is what we're supposed to do. And I think, and I do believe that once we do that, there won't be a shortage of volunteers because they're going to be looking for, where can I serve? Where does the Lord call me to serve in ministry?
Mm.
I know every single minister that I've talked to stresses during this time of the year. So, am I going to have enough people when I open up shop again? Or is it just going to be me? So, advice to what to do.
Yeah, I mean, a big thing is we would do is continue formation during the summer. We know it's difficult connecting with your volunteers because people are in and out. At least typically here in SoCal, people are in and out of town during summer, vacation months, all that stuff. So it's kind of hard to keep a schedule, keep some sort of steady, but offer opportunities, there's great summer conferences out there for leadership formation. If you can take them, if you can afford it, do fundraisers, like again, feed them. Right. So maybe it's just you and your pastor putting on a retreat for them, as a thank you, like a spiritual retreat, uninterested, just, hey, we want to give you back for everything you gave this year. Boom, here you go. Retreat for you guys, like our treat, the church's treat. Like feed them so that they can keep coming back. Stay connected. You need to stay connected to your volunteer leaders because it's all about retention. It's all about retention. If you gain a couple, 2, 3 here and there every year, with enough time, you're gonna start building a base of those, like, you know, your hardcore leaders that are gonna stick around, stay, you know, because you're feeding them, you're taking care of them. They're gonna keep coming back, for sure. But you need to give. You need to give as a leader.
And as you said, your friend said, you know, find out what they're good at, and they'll be with you forever.
Yeah.
Because they'll continue to be there, because they're, you know, you're not creating people. You know, one of the things that I did in order to keep volunteers was the recruitment started at a young age.
Yeah.
It started actually in middle school youth group to encourage them to say, hey, you know what? One day you're going to be a cheerleader. You go to high school. And recruiting from confirmation programs. I said, hey, do you want to be able to give more than you're currently giving? Do you have a desire to serve? Do you have a desire to be a disciple? Here is where you can serve in ministry to young people like yourselves. And then once they do that, they become young adults. Do you want to continue on serving and providing that opportunity? What really helped, because if you don't have money, such as the parish that I was volunteering at, when you don't have money, well, you do your own creative things. You run your own training program. And I remember we had a 2.5-day training program that was called Worthy of the Call. And it made them feel important. Sending them letters, invitations. And again, the food that was there was just volunteer food donated.
Yeah. Knights of Columbus.
The moms, Little Caesars. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's.
Give to Little Caesars.
Give it to Little Caesars. But just those things, and recruitment was early on.
Yeah.
I remember the whole reason why we did DBS. The only reason why we did DBS was it was a training ground for new volunteers. It's like, if you can survive. I remember telling volunteers, if you can survive BBS, you can survive youth ministry.
Easy.
It's like these kindergartners
that week
with these guys for all this time. Yeah, you can survive youth ministry. And the funny thing is, when they finally did youth ministry, they're like, this is easy.
Yeah. Compared
to VBS, this is easy. It's so you're right. Continue feeding them. Continue to try to walk with them. Being that person, that go-to person, and being available.
Yeah. Pray with them. Pray with them. Pray for them. Pray for them by name. You know, pray for your leaders by name. Check in with your leaders. Check in how they're doing emotionally, mentally throughout the year. Not just like, oh, great, you're good. You know, I'll check in with you, you know, next summer. It's like, check in with them periodically, see how they're doing mentally, emotionally. You know, pray for them very specifically, and give them opportunities for growth.
So on that note, what's going on with Net?
What's going on with Net? Well, I mean, this podcast will probably come out after, but we're doing a worship night tomorrow.
Oh yeah. That is tomorrow.
It is tomorrow.
I'm gonna be there.
You are?
I'm gonna be there.
Awesome.
I just gotta ask my wife. I'm married, man.
Oh gosh.
Gotta get her permission. Hopefully she'll go with me.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, Net is you know, we should go live after this. So we just did a podcast. But yeah, you know, for you guys who've been to a Net retreat, or who know anything about Net Ministries, I think what's coming up with you guys is that you guys are having interviews, or
well, we did have interviews this past weekend. If there's anyone out there listening to the podcast, you want you've been thinking about maybe possibly taking like a gap year from college, or before you go to college, you want to do some sort of like youth ministry type thing, you want to volunteer, give 10 months of your life to the Lord, thought about mission work, hey, Net might be the thing for you. Hit me up. I'll have her out here. Get my email out there for you guys, and just shoot me a quick email, and I'll reach out to you guys, let you know what Net's all about. because we are recruiting still people for the missionary year that starts in actually a month. What is today, the 16th? It is the 16th. A month from today, I will be in Minnesota with 100 plus Catholics from all over the country. What we call net missionaries training will start on August 16th. And we're really excited for it. I just got an email today from the guy who's in charge of training, praying and fasting for all you contracted missionaries, praying and fasting for everyone involved in net training. It's 5 weeks of training, spiritual formation and ministry formation. And then we put people on teams and we send them out throughout the entire United States to do youth retreats for middle schoolers and high schoolers. So we're really excited to have our missionaries there next month.
And they're really amazing. Our youth and our young adults now who went through that first net retreat still remember them and still remember the song, the prayer song, how to pray. I'm excited for that.
Oh, that was a good one.
Still know that. Definitely. And it all starts in Minnesota. So you guys got to hit them up. Come and see. Now I'm singing. But Manny, the great thing about having you on the podcast is that you bring about a whole lot of wisdom with what's going on in ministry. From your experience to what we need to do in the vineyard, we need to continue to listen to young people of what their desires are. What do they want us? What do they want from us? They had the national dialogue, and they said what it is that they desired. It's from Christus Vivit. The national dialogue was an offshoot of that. And now that we have that, hopefully what will come out from that is a transformation of our programs so that we can truly evangelize to create missionary disciples that are just not doing the ministry years, but to go on to their young adult years, to their mature adult years, and to their senior years, continuing on. And for volunteers out there, coming from me and Manny, if you are interested at all and feeling called to volunteer in youth ministry, in young adult ministry, don't let your age count you out. Be there. If you feel compelled that, hey, you know what? I feel called, speak to your youth minister. If you're at a parish that does not have youth ministry, speak to your pastor. It's how to get one started. Don't be one of those parents who said, man, we should have a youth ministry. Be that parent who said, I'm going to start a youth ministry. I'm going to find some young people, my children's friends, and they're going to be the original core team members, and you are going to be amazed. I laugh because I said, that was the first youth ministry was Noah and his kids. And they literally ministered to a flock, several flocks. But those are my dad jokes. But Manny, do you have any parting words?
No, just if you're contemplating again taking any action on this national dialogue stuff we mentioned about going away from the classroom model, you're scared or something from doing that, you have questions about that, maybe how that would practically look like, and you just don't know the answers yet. Hey, I'm an open book. If I can help, I don't have all the answers, I don't have all the knowledge, thanks be to God. And so, but the little knowledge I do have, I'm happy to just start conversations with you individually. So if you're a minister out there, maybe you're getting started in ministry, you ran across this podcast, you want to know what that practically would look like, shoot me an email. My email will be made available here, and let's get talking. Let's act. Let's take action. Let's get something done.
And on an added note, if you want Manny to come to your parish, if you're a pastor who's listening to this, if you're a youth minister who's listening to this, if you want Manny to come to your parish to speak on this topic on how to activate young disciples, how to make missionary disciples, to talk about net ministries and what they're doing. Call him up, set up a point where he can come around and I think the man gives talks too.
Every now and then.
Every now and then. I think he does. I've heard him before. Actually, pretty good. So, Manny, thank you for coming on the show again. It's always good to hear from fellow youth ministers working in the vineyard, especially for people who are actually going to Minnesota and prepare people to actually do ministry work. And I'm always amazed at young people like you who are continuing the mission that was started by our Lord Jesus Christ himself and the 12 disciples, to go forth and share the good news, to completely just share the good news. On that note, friends, I know there's a lot of things that's going on in the church. I hope and I pray that you guys use prudential judgment in having those discussions, having the dialogue with one another. Remember, we are all Christians. And remember, we are Catholic. And regardless of where you stand on the issues of today, remember, our future is not in this world. Future is with Christ in heaven. And how we treat one another will dictate where we'll be. So on that note, that's all we have for you all this time around. I hope that what we discussed connected with you. If you have any comments or you want to send us an email, contact me at catholic.dad50@gmail.com. Send us an email, and I usually respond as soon as I can, unless I miss it. But anyways, on that note, remember, friends, you can support the podcast by going on our Patreon, become a patron. I want to give a shout out to our new patrons, Diana, who was one of my confirmation students, my confirmandi. She is now our newest patron, along with Jose and who else? Am I missing someone? Jose and Elizabeth, all former students. Love the fact that our students are supporting us. If you want to support us, go on our link in our Instagram or on our YouTube page. Everything that you provide allows us to continue this podcast and our mission to support the young people. Also, I want to give you guys some information. Every second Saturday of the month, This Connected does go to Planned Parenthood in San Bernardino to just share the good news, share some love, and once in a while we do have a save. Praying for Angelica, the security guard over there, that she may find alternative means of work. But if you guys want to join us, we'll be there August 14th. Remember, every second Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m., we're over there ministering to people, the workers, the people who are standing there, just to make sure that no one gets killed, especially just sharing God's love. So anyways, remember, friends, live a life of holiness. We'll be praying for you. Please pray for us, and most importantly, be blessed and be there.
Different points of view and highs and lows, a new perspective everywhere you go. Open up your mind and drown with the noise of different generations of the girls and boys. So sit back and relax, this the podcast. Don't overreact if the thoughts are abstract. When it's hosted by Catholic.Dad, who knows what's gonna happen?
Hey, what's up, fam?
Different points of view and highs and lows, a new perspective everywhere you go. Open up your mind and drown with the noise, and see if this connected.
What's up, fam? To connect generations and situations about faith, life, and whatever comes along the way.
Expect runaway thoughts like a runaway train. Break into conversation like links of a chain. Make a Hail Mary pass, hope this connects. Have a question for a guest, put it to rest. Live a life of holiness, lead by example. Follow at Catholic.Dad and Mini Tangled. Christ leads our way, he's the good shepherd. Pray for one another, be blessed and be there. Different points of view and highs and lows, a new perspective everywhere you go. Open up your mind and drown with the noise, and see if this connected.
That's it.
Yeah.
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 How do you press stop? Yeah. Hi, Tony. If you are watching this and you're gonna edit this, congratulations, bro. I'm still a little disappointed I wasn't the first one to know. Why is Bethany the first one to know that you guys are gonna get married?
That's kind of messed up, man.
Yeah, I mean, he should have told me
Yeah.
before he asked Bethany.
It was easy.
Yeah.
Just shoot a text.
You know, it's like,
It was
here
simple.
now, I'm gonna ask Bethany to marry me. Sorry, but and get this, he didn't even invite me to go to Orlando with him.
You proposed in Orlando?
Yeah,
That's dope.